"Mary, sweetheart, where are you?" I called out as soon as I got home. I could hear crying, but I couldn't see my daughter. The sound was soft, echoing through the house. Something was wrong, really wrong. When I finally found her in her room, I was frozen in shock. My daughter, who loved her long, beautiful curls, had her head completely shaved. "Honey, what happened? Who did this to you?" My voice shook, and I could already feel anger building inside me. Then she said something that made my blood boil. "It was Grandma, Mom," Mary sobbed, her eyes red from crying. "She said I looked like a troublemaker with my hair and shaved it all off by force." At that moment, I felt a mix of shock, pain, and a rage like never before. Right there, I swore I'd get revenge. "Hi, I'm Julie, 38 years old, single, and a full-time mother. My life revolves around one person, my 15-year-old daughter, Mary. We live in a small, simple house in the suburbs. It's nothing fancy, but it's our safe place. Between my tiring shifts as a nurse, I do everything I can to make sure we have food on the table and a roof over our heads. It's tough, but no one ever said life would be easy. Mary is a whirlwind of creativity and intelligence. Her curls are so beautiful, even Rapunzel would be jealous, and she loves showing off her personality through them. If it were just the two of us, life would be perfect. But there's a dark cloud that hangs over our peace. Lauren, my ex-mother-in-law, lives way too close to us. Lauren is 72 years old, a widow, and has a sharp tongue. She helps look after Mary after school, and I know I should be thankful, but the price I pay is constant criticism. "Julie, dear," she always starts with that annoying tone that makes my skin crawl. "Don't you think Mary's hair is a bit wild?" I take a deep breath and say, "She likes it that way, Lauren," trying to stay calm. But inside, I feel like screaming. "In my day, girls knew how to present themselves," she says like she's some queen from the past. I bite my tongue again, holding back what I really want to say. I want to scream because free childcare is something I can't afford to lose. What makes this even harder is that Lauren was so strict with her own son, Mary's father, yet he still went down the wrong path. Kyle, the man I had Mary with, lived his whole life under his mother's tight control. Lauren raised him with a heavy hand, believing that harsh discipline would build his character. He was never allowed to be himself or make his own choices. Everything he did was judged by her. When Kyle grew up, he rejected everything his mother tried to force on him. He rebelled, making bad decisions that eventually led to him getting involved in trouble. Now, he's in prison, and Mary doesn't have her father in her life. Lauren, of course, blames the world and me for what happened to Kyle. She acts like I ruined her son, as if I pushed him to live that kind of life. But the truth is, it was Lauren's suffocating control that drove Kyle away. Now, she takes all her bitterness out on me and Mary, trying to do the same thing to my daughter. Lauren sees Mary as her second chance to shape someone the way she wants, and I'm the one who has to stand in her way. At first, Lauren begged to help with Mary. She insisted that as a grandmother, she had the right to be part of her life and make up for lost time. "Julie, I'm old, but I want to be in my granddaughter's life. Let me help," she'd say, almost like she was desperate. I admit, part of me believed her. And of course, I needed help. Between my hectic shifts at the hospital and being a single mom, having someone step in seemed like a huge relief, even if it was Lauren. I wanted to believe she was sincere, that maybe she could be a positive influence on Mary. I thought her criticism was just part of her personality, and help is help, right? But every day, I regret that decision more and more. Lauren slowly took over, bringing her rules, her expectations, and her judgments into our lives. Her presence became a burden. She wasn't helping, she was trying to control, just like she did with Kyle. And we all know how that turned out. Thankfully, I have Isabella, my best friend and coworker. She's my support system. "How do you deal with that old witch?" she asked me the other day over coffee, pouring sugar into her cup like she was trying to make the conversation less bitter. "You have the patience of a saint, Julie," she said. I laughed, but it was a tired laugh. "My patience is running out, Isabella. It's really running out. And then there's Paul, my neighbor who's always ready to help fix things around the house. Let's be real, he's a total heartthrob, and the way he looks at me, well, If I hadn't learned my lesson with Mary's father, I might consider it. But after the mess of that relationship, my new rule is simple. Keep your distance. Hey, Julie, need a hand? Paul calls from the street. Here he comes, wearing a tight shirt and flashing his easy smile. I try not to stare at his biceps as he lifts some boxes from the garage. Thanks, Paul. You're a lifesaver, I say, but in my head, I'm thinking, and a temptation I really don't need right now. But let's focus on the real drama in my life, which isn't handsome neighbors, it's the ongoing Cold War between Lauren and me. The battleground? Mary's upbringing. Mary, sit up straight. A young lady doesn't slouch. Lauren barks in the middle of dinner, like she's training my daughter for the military. I see Mary's shoulders drop, and my heart sinks. Mom, do I have to listen to her? Mary asks me quietly, tired of it all. I glance at Lauren, silently letting her know that this fight isn't over. Just do your best, darling, I say, trying to comfort Mary. We all have different ideas about what's important. My voice sharpens as I look at Lauren. Different ideas, yes, Lauren mutters, with that superior tone that makes me want to scream. If you listen to me, Julie, this girl wouldn't be running wild. I clench my fists under the table, trying not to lose it right then and there. She's not running wild, Lauren. She's expressing herself, and I won't stop her from doing that. My tone is sharper than I intended, but I'm at the end of my rope. Lauren, as always, stays calm and cold. Mark my words, Julie. Without discipline, that girl will end up in trouble. I watch as Mary goes to her room, her curls bouncing. Curls I wouldn't be seeing for much longer. A shiver runs down my spine. I've been holding this situation together for so long, but something inside me is screaming that it's about to blow, and it's going to be ugly. After a long extra shift at the hospital, all I wanted was to come home, hug Mary, and forget about Lauren for a while. But as soon as I walked through the door, I felt it. Something was terribly wrong. Mary, sweetheart, I'm home. I called out, but there was no answer. The silence was thick, creeping over me like a bad feeling. It was the kind of silence that only comes right before something awful happens. I ran to her room, and when I opened the door, my heart stopped. Mary was curled up on the bed, sobbing, her whole body shaking with her tears. When she finally looked up at me, I nearly collapsed. Her beautiful curls were gone. Not a single strand of hair was left. Her head was shaved all the way to the scalp. Mom, Mary cried, running into my arms. Grandma did this while I was sleeping. I held her tight, trying not to fall apart right there. My love, everything's going to be okay. We'll fix this, I whispered, but inside, I was burning with anger. My mind screamed, how dare that woman do this to my daughter? Furious, I stormed into the living room like a hurricane. Lauren was sitting there, calm as ever, acting like nothing had happened. Cool as a cucumber. My daughters, I yelled, my voice echoing through the house. What the hell have you done? I was trembling with rage, but Lauren didn't even flinch. I did what needed to be done, she replied, her voice calm, as if what she'd done was perfectly reasonable. That girl was becoming too vain and disobedient, Julie. I almost laughed at how absurd her words were. Vain? Disobedient? She's 15, Lauren. What on earth are you talking about? It's time she learned some discipline, Lauren said with her usual coldness, as if she were laying down some unarguable fact. In my day, girls who cared too much about their looks, who spent time in front of the mirror like Mary, ended up lost. You think it's just hair, but that's how it starts. Today it's curls, tomorrow it's makeup and fancy clothes, and before you know it, she'll be pregnant and ruined. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Pregnant? Lost? Mary is 15, Lauren. I shouted, completely stunned. Lauren kept talking like she was quoting some outdated manual from the 1948s. My body trembled with anger, my voice shaky from the hatred I was trying to hold back. She's a child, not a grown woman. What you did isn't discipline, it's cruelty. Don't be naive, Julie, Lauren said, shaking her head in disapproval. If you keep letting her be vain, giving her all this freedom, she'll end up just like her father, lost, with no direction or morals. That was it. I snapped. Shut up, I screamed. This isn't your time. You old witch. You shaved her head against her will. That's not discipline, it's abuse. And I'm calling the police. Lauren laughed, a dry, bitter laugh like someone who thinks they're above everyone else. The sound filled the room. Oh, Julie, don't be so dramatic. You're weak, always have been. I've tolerated your soft parenting for too long. Someone had to step in before Mary turned into a delinquent. She was heading down the same wrong path as her father, and you didn't even notice, Lauren said coldly. That was the final straw. My already fragile self-control broke in that moment. My hands were shaking, and my whole body trembled with fury. How dare she compare Mary to Frank, as if it were my fault, as if I had failed. Get out of my house. Now, I yelled, unable to stop the tears that were rolling down my face. I will never let you touch my daughter again. Lauren, as cold as ever, calmly gathered her things without showing any regret. Mark my words, Julie. You will regret not listening to me, she said, her words dripping with venom. When the door finally closed behind her, my strength collapsed. The tears came freely now. I felt like I had failed to protect my daughter. But in that moment, I made a silent promise. Lauren would never have the power to hurt us again. Suddenly, a knock on the door startled me. It was Paul, my neighbor. He had a worried look, the kind only someone who truly cares about you could have. Julie, is everything okay? I heard shouting. He asked, concern in his voice. The moment he saw my face, he knew something terrible had happened. What happened? He asked softly but urgently. I couldn't find the words. I just pointed toward Mary's room. When Paul saw her, his eyes widened in shock. Oh my God! Who did this? He whispered. Lauren, I muttered, my voice shaking with hatred, each word heavy with anger. Paul's expression changed from that of a friendly neighbor to someone ready for battle. This is unacceptable. I'm calling the police right now, he declared. No, Mary cried, her voice broken, her eyes filled with fear. I don't want anyone to see me like this. She curled up in my arms, and I held her tightly, trying to shield her from the pain that had pierced her heart. It's okay, my love, I whispered, trying to comfort her. We won't do anything you don't want to do. I'm here. Paul knelt beside us, his face showing both deep concern and restrained anger. Is there anything I can do? He asked, his voice kind but firm, like someone who wouldn't tolerate injustice. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. It was Isabella, my best friend. Her voice was full of worry. Julie, what's going on? I got your message, and it sounded like you were falling apart. I tried to speak, but the words barely came out between sobs. I told her what had happened that night. That witch. Isabella shouted over the phone, filled with rage on my behalf. I'm coming over right now, Isabella said, and before I could even catch my breath, there was another knock at the door. In just a few minutes, she was inside, arms full of bags, looking like a hero ready for battle. Okay, here's the plan, she said with determination, pulling out tissues, hats, and fashion magazines. I brought ideas for pixie cuts and some inspiration for colored streaks. We're going to fix this right now. Mary, still heartbroken, managed a small smile as Isabella got to work. At that moment, I realized how lucky I was to have a friend like her. Isabella was always the one who knew how to solve things with a practical approach and a bit of humor. Relax. Aunt Isabella is here to save the day. And if that old witch comes back, we'll deal with her with a haircut and an axe, she joked, trying to lighten the mood. As Isabella worked on Mary's hair, making the best of what was left, Paul came closer, and I started to open up. I told him everything Lauren had done, every detail, every wound she had caused not just to Mary, but to me as well. The guilt weighed heavy in my heart. I can't believe I let that woman get so close to my daughter, I whispered. The days that followed were a blur of tears, anger, and sleepless nights. Mary refused to leave her room, let alone go back to school. I called work, pretending I was sick, but the truth was, Mary needed me, and that was all that mattered. Our first stop was the police station, but frustration hit quickly. The officer, looking completely uninterested, said, I'm sorry, ma'am, But since there was no physical harm, this is a civil matter. Physical harm? I snapped before I could control myself. Look at my daughter. How can you say there's no physical harm? But it seemed the law was on Lauren's side. The injustice was right there, and I just wanted to scream. Our second stop was a lawyer's office. He listened carefully to our story and then said, "We can definitely pursue a claim for emotional damages." That small glimmer of hope was something, but I knew no legal action could truly heal the damage Lauren had done to Mary. Meanwhile, Paul had also been working quietly behind the scenes. "I have a friend who specializes in family law," he said one day, his eyes filled with determination. "He's willing to take your case pro bono." In that moment, I felt like maybe we weren't fighting this battle alone after all. I could have kissed him right then, but there wasn't time for that. Things were about to get even more complicated, and I knew I would need every bit of strength I had left. "We're going to bury that witch in paperwork," Paul said firmly, and with Isabella by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. First, the whispers started. In the supermarket, I noticed neighbors giving me sideways glances and hush murmurs. Then the phone calls began, mostly from distant relatives. "Julie, is it true you've been neglecting Mary?" one cousin asked, her voice dripping with judgment. That's when I realized Lauren wasn't just trying to hurt me, she was trying to destroy me. She had started a smear campaign, spreading rumors that I was an unfit mother. I collapsed onto the sofa next to Isabella and Paul, feeling the pressure weighing me down. "That which is trying to turn everyone against me," I said, the lump in my throat growing stronger. But Lauren had underestimated me. If she wanted a war, she was going to get one. I decided to fight back. I started digging into Lauren's past, contacting her old friends and relatives. I needed to know if there was more she was hiding. What I found left me cold. One night, as I sat with Mary, she finally opened up to me, revealing what she had been holding back for so long. If I misbehaved, Grandma said she'd send me to a boarding school, Mary said, hesitating for a moment before continuing. Tears filled her eyes as she added, "She used to lock me in the closet when I did something wrong." My blood boiled. How had I not seen this sooner? How could I have let my daughter suffer like this? I hugged Mary tightly, my heart breaking with guilt and anger. "This is not your fault, sweetheart," I assured her. "Your grandmother will never hurt you again." With the help of Isabella and Paul, we started preparing for our next move. We set up hidden cameras around the house, creating a trap in case Lauren tried to contact us again. We even trained Mary, teaching her how to collect evidence without putting herself in danger. "Remember, Mary," Paul said gently but seriously as he showed her how to use the voice recorder on her phone. "If your grandmother calls or shows up, record everything. Leave no room for mistakes." We were ready. Lauren had no idea what was coming. I had been on the defensive for too long, but now it was my turn to fight back. "Press this button as soon as necessary, understood?" I said, looking Mary in the eyes. She nodded with a strength that both made me proud and broke my heart at the same time. "I won't let you down, Mom." "You could never let me down, my love," I replied, hugging her tightly. "We're in this together, all the way." The trap was set, and now we just had to wait for Lauren to make her next move. This time, I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to end this for good. The day of the trial finally came, and my stomach was in knots. The tension was unbearable. Mary squeezed my hand tightly as we walked into the courtroom. Her eyes were focused on the floor, but her determination gave me strength. "You can do this, Mom," she whispered. Her courage fueled me, giving me strength I didn't know I had. Our lawyer began presenting our case, and it was like a mountain of evidence was crashing down on Lauren. The footage from the hidden cameras showed everything: her invading our home, her hateful words echoing in the courtroom. "You ungrateful brat. I'll teach you to never disobey me again," her voice boomed from the recordings. The judge, who had stayed calm up until then, grew more serious with each vile word Lauren had spoken. But that was only the start. One by one, witnesses took the stand: former family friends, nannies, even Mary's old piano teacher. They all shared their stories. She told me if I didn't make Mary practice piano for 5 hours a day, she'd fire me. the teacher said, his voice shaking. The stories kept coming, building an airtight case against Lauren. But the most powerful moment was when Mary gave her testimony. My brave little girl stood there, her voice trembling, but filled with determination. She told me if I told Mom what she did, she'd make sure I'd be taken away, Mary confessed, tears in her eyes. I couldn't hold back my own tears. Lauren's lawyer tried desperately to make her seem like a loving, misunderstood grandmother, but it was too late. The evidence was clear, and the court wasn't buying it. When the judge finally announced his decision, I felt like I could breathe again. This court grants a permanent restraining order against the defendant, the judge said firmly. Additionally, significant damages are awarded to cover therapy and emotional distress caused to the plaintiff. Lauren was officially out of our lives forever. As we left the courtroom, feeling lighter than I had in months, Lauren made one last pathetic attempt. She came toward us, tears streaming down her face, hoping for some kind of forgiveness. "Julie Mary, I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. But I cut her off, my voice cold and firm. "Save your apologies, Lauren. You're dead to us." I turned away without looking back, and we walked away. In that moment, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. We were free. The months that followed were hard, but we got through them together. Mary started therapy, and little by little I saw my daughter come back to life. The sparkle in her eyes returned, and so did her strength. She was coming out of the shell she had been hiding in. One night, at the dinner table, with me, Isabella, Paul, and Mary, she made a surprising announcement. "I want to donate the settlement money," Mary said firmly. "I want to help other kids who've been through what I did." I smiled, proud of her strength, but as her words echoed in my mind, a plan started to form. Mary was healing, but I still carried the anger. Lauren had tried to destroy my daughter and ruin me, and I couldn't just let her get away with it. She needed to feel what we had felt. Lauren probably thought that the restraining order and enforced distance meant everything was settled, that she could finally live in peace. She had no idea the real battle was just beginning. First, I created a false sense of peace, no contact, no confrontations. I let Lauren believe we were out of her life, that the fight was over. But behind the scenes, I was preparing something bigger. I used what I knew about her life, her secrets, her mistakes. The woman who loved to criticize others had a past full of little flaws. Unpaid debts, disputes, and then there was the financial scandal tied to her late husband's money. If that came out, it would destroy her reputation. With Isabella and Paul's help, I started uncovering those secrets. The first shock came when one of Lauren's neighbors received an anonymous letter about the financial scandal. Not long after, a similar letter was sent to the condo's management office. Nothing concrete, just hints and suggestions, but enough to stir up suspicion and make her uncomfortable. Then, I reached out to an old friend of Lauren, someone she had betrayed years ago. I arranged a chance reunion, encouraging the friend to bring up stories Lauren would rather keep buried. Their already fragile relationship fell apart completely. Lauren's image started to crumble. But the final blow was the cruelest. Lauren thrived on the admiration and respect she forced on everyone around her. With the walls closing in and her reputation in ruins, she began to isolate herself. But before that, I spread a rumor that she was in a financial crisis, claiming that her own late husband had left her broke. The scandal made her a joke in the social circles she cared so much about. Eventually, Lauren found herself completely alone, no friends, no reputation, and no respect, which she had always demanded from everyone around her. She became irrelevant, and that hurt her more than anything else. When word of her downfall spread, Lauren tried to reach out to me, maybe to ask for help. But by then, the compassionate version of me no longer existed. There was no vulnerable Mary to protect anymore. There was just me, watching from a distance. She had tried to destroy my life, but in the end, she had destroyed her own. Thanks for listening to this story. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment below and share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next stories.